Hello. Hello, beautiful muted Jenny.
Hi.
How are you, sweetie?
Bit better than yesterday.
Good.
How are you?
I'm okay. My hands are doing weird things.
What do you mean?
My fingers have gone all wrinkly, and my palms have been really, really itchy. So I've spoken to a doctor, and they prescribed me like a steroid cream and hydrating stuff and whatever. But I think it's some sort of eczema.
Okay.
But it's odd and a bit annoying.
I can imagine. Sorry.
That's okay.
I hope I'll be able to go back to work next week, but we'll see. It's just a bit annoying because in this practical year, my sick days are the same as my holidays. So I'm using up my holidays right now, which is...
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah.
You don't get statutory sick leave?
No.
That's awful.
Yeah. It's really silly.
Jenny's sick days and holidays are the same.
Fuck, that's not allowed.
I don't have I'm not actually properly working, so it's kind of allowed, but yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm basically working full time in hospital. I'm getting paid 200 euros a month, and I don't have sick days. It's like, it's
ridiculous.
Exploitative.
It's super exploitative. I got paid a little bit better for Corona reasons until July. And also if I'm missing work because of Corona, then it doesn't count into my holidays. But otherwise, yeah, my sick days are my holidays.
That's
and
awful.
I'm sick and I don't have Corona, which I'm really happy about. But if I had Corona, I wouldn't be using up my holidays. So it's like, yeah.
Hey, Carmen.
Hello.
Oh, you.
You, Katie. Huh? Sorry.
Not ill enough to be off work, just ill enough to not really want to do anything.
Oh, that sucks.
Which means that I wander around the house reading like 2 pages of a book and then putting it down and not wanting to read it anymore. But hey, my quilt is almost done, or at least this side of it is. And then I just need to design the other side of it and then make it. And then it'll all be finished.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I quite like
Have you started it when Storytime started?
Oh no, this one I started during Matilda.
During Matilda, okay. Ah, it's a new one.
It's a new one. It's a small one.
Okay.
It's a baby quilt for my friend Fraser who's having a baby.
So the first one is already finished. I didn't know that you had changed quilts.
The front of it's finished, the back of it is still to be started. Hello, Frankie.
Hi, beautifuls.
In a new place.
I'm at Emma's house.
That means you have a dog. Does that mean you have Emma?
Do you want me to go in search of her?
Before you do, if you stand in front of the wallpaper, you'll blend right in, I think.
Yeah, good camouflage.
Where's she gone?
Frankie gone.
There she is.
I will give it a couple of more minutes to see if any more friends turn up so that she can say hello, and then I will take you down and find her. How are you all doing?
We are all outraged at Jenny's employers.
What? What have they done?
In this practical year, which I'm not really employed in, I'm using up my holidays as sick days. I don't have sick days. So,
What? Wait, what?
yeah.
That can't be allowed.
It's legal. It's legal.
How?
Bullshit. I don't know. It's part of my part of university. It's not really work. Yeah.
That is steaming bullshit. That is total bullshit.
I mean, if it's at a university, does this not mean that it presumably means that this is like, because like the people I supervise at university, I say, you know, do what you want. You need, you know, presumably you got some supervisor who's made you do that, or some manager that's made you do that.
It's a general rule, German-wide, that you can only miss out on 30 days during this year.
I just tell my people not to write it down. No one's going to notice if they're not there.
It's Germany. Everybody writes everything down. So yeah, I'm on holiday.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, hi Flynn. Hi Flynn. Do you want to say hi? Do you want to say?
I can hear an Emma.
Do you want to say hi? Katie and Nick are here. Jenny and Carmen, Malcolm, Michael, Ian, Mike Cox, Gordon, Ivan, Kitty and Rory. Flynn, hi sweetie. Look at this good dog. Look
There
at
she
this
is.
good dog. Look at this good dog. Hi.
Hello, doggy.
Hello. Hello. So good to see you.
What is Flynn eating?
He's got a juicy bone.
It looks like the feet of a troll.
So this is Flynn and this is Emma. And say hello, Sam.
Hello.
Hey, Sam.
Hey guys.
We've eaten everything.
Are you the tiger who came to tea?
Everything, yes. We've eaten so much hecking food. Vast quantities. Right, I'm going to take you all back upstairs now. Say everyone, say goodbye to Emma. Goodbye. Right. Right. Take you all back in the dark.
Kitty, how could you? In front of Frankie.
What?
It's an incentive.
Wow.
I think it is.
What do you think it is?
Forbidden goods. The fruit of the cinnamon tree. Roll form. Oofed. Are they the ones from the place?
We got them this morning. After talking about them last night, we were like, we need to. Rory went out and got them while I was cleaning all of his clothes. Oh.
That's an amazing division of labor.
Michael, you also sound like you have wonderful things.
Homemade apple crumble.
Oh, sweetie.
All the Michaels get all the nice things this evening.
I've had, we made hummus and and roasted veggies with halloumi, and we made bread and chocolate mousse and chocolate brownies with fudge and salted pretzels in it.
Well,
Ooh,
well, now.
yum.
Oh, diddly.
Those brownies.
I'm
I mean,
making
everything
bread
looks
for
good.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Rising, rising.
Stop, too much. Rising too much. Come back. Come back. How are we doing for time? I have no idea what.
6 minutes past.
It's what, my darling?
6 minutes past.
Loads of time.
2 minutes past.
Why were there flatworms on the Storytime group?
It was in relation to
To describe this.
I mean, there was a certain amount of, I don't even know where to begin. I stayed for the after chat. I stayed right till the end of the after chat for maybe the first time ever. And it got weird.
It always gets weird.
Pretty weird. But we found out some very exciting stuff courtesy of Kitty, who told us all about autotomy in the natural kingdom. And we discussed what would be the sound and kind of appropriate hand gesture for the fluttering of one's loins.
I think we used the term quivering to begin with. You mentioned like quivering.
What was the sound again?
Yours,
Ooh.
yours was you were going for a kind of bassy hum.
More animal rather than excited giggle, sort of. That kind. Depends on the nature of the quivers, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that could be my third album, is the nature of the
The
quivers.
nature of quivers.
I definitely think that this kind of conversation makes more sense in the after chat than it does in the fore chat.
Yeah, in the cold light of the pre-chat.
We're starting strong today.
Yeah, we must only ever move forward and not look back. I don't think that looking back at what we've all said in the after chat is of any good to anybody.
I mean, it often creates interesting forward after chat. And I mean, once you start this low in this starting chat, there's quite a lot of different room to decline to.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Right, my darling. How would people feel about some? Would you be at all interested in me reading a little story to you tonight?
That sounds amazing.
Okay, let's have some of that then. Okay. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. 15. Do you believe in small gods? I asked of Sokath, his eyes uncovered. I do not disbelieve them, he said to me. That is the nature of skeptics, remember. We would rather debate than know for certain. Do you understand how small gods receive their powers? I asked then. I had to come at him like the wadi with its meandering lines. I could not come at him as the sandcrow flew. I do, he said to me. But when skeptics talk, we often explain things we already know. In the telling, we dredge up the memory of half-forgotten facts or inspire new ones. So tell me how small gods are made.
When a person dies, if he has done something great, his son and his grandsons will build a shrine, I said to him. They will pray to him and leave offerings of oil and bread. They will carry memories of him with them in the caravan, and he will help them if he can. Sokath, his eyes uncovered, was nodding. And the more prayers that are said, and the more offerings that are laid will increase the small god's power, he said, until his children's children's children forget him, and he becomes nothing more than a pile of bones in the desert sand. That is what the priests say, I said to him. What do you say? He asked of me. I thought about it, chewing on a piece of bread longer than I needed to before swallowing it down. I say that our father and my brothers have always returned to us, I told him, and that our herds multiply and no one goes hungry in our father's tents, even if there is a season when the wadi does not flood. But is that the small god? He asked of me. Or is it that your father is a good tradesman? Can it not be both? I asked in return. Can our father be a pious man and a clever one who is served by himself and favoured by a small god? There is no way to test that, he said to me, and it must be tested to be proven. I considered his words. I had never thought to prove that a small god existed. I had only ever known that they had. How do you prove that the sun will rise tomorrow? I asked of him, and he smiled at me like I'd won a prize. I have observed it many times, he said to me, but that alone does not guarantee that it will rise again tomorrow. The same way that I have observed our father return home with fine silks, it does not mean that the small god favours him, I said. Yes, he said to me. However, he continued, my companion, Sokath his eyes to the stars, has determined that the world we stand on, in addition to being round, as we discussed, also spins like a spindle and whorl, and that is why we have day and night. He has a model that shows that as long as we continue to spin, the sun will continue to come up in the morning. I thought you said that the skeptics would rather debate than know, I said to him. I smiled. It was better than talking to our father. We all have our moments of weakness, he said to me. There was a laugh, a real one in his voice, but then his face darkened. To be honest, Lady Bless, the skeptics have changed since Lomelkeen took the throne. Debate is no longer enough for the younger ones. They seek only to know, not to think. I am not sure why that is so bad, I told him. I can think of many things I would like to know. Yes, but a knowing mind is a closed one, he said to me. On that, at least, we skeptics and priests agree. We have the water clock because someone needed to know the time when it was night, I told him. Yes, he said to me, and because someone needed to know that there would always be water in the Khazar cisterns, they built a dam in the wadi which dried up everything downstream of the city. As everything does, knowledge comes with a price. The priests agree with you on that too, I said to him, and thought of my sister's brother. He was quiet for a time, picking olives up one by one, no longer spitting the pits out. He ignored the bread, which was hardening in the heat anyway. I think you cannot prove if small gods have power because they are dead, and you cannot ask them directly, I said to him. That is true, he said to me. The dead cannot speak. What would happen if you built a shrine to someone who was alive? I asked of him. What would happen if you prayed and left offerings? He rolled the olive pit between his fingers. I think that person would become lucky, he said. I do not think it would be enough to notice. What if a whole village prayed? I asked. What if traders went out and spoke of this living small god to others? What if they sent out a token and built shrines and more people prayed? Now he looked troubled. I wondered if, for all his fine words, he really did believe that small gods had powers to work on the living. That sort of person would be special indeed. He said the words so softly that I barely heard him over the water in the fountain. That sort of person would have had to do a great deed and survived it. I do not know what sort of man that would be, or if we would like him very much. He meant Lomelkeen. I could see it in his face. I had not considered that. It was possible that the men who became richer under Lomelkeen's rule built shrines to him, but I had seen the way his power worked, and it did not look like any small god power I had ever seen. Men pray in the morning and in the evening, I said to him. In the heat of the day, they speak to one another. They trade and they talk and they drink cool water. He looked at me, and for a fraction of a breath, I saw fear in his eyes. But then it was replaced by wonder and a hope so desperate that it made my heart hurt. Lomelkeen would never have shrines. Women pray waking and walking and working, I said to him. They pray with the spindles drop and the shuttles shift. They weave their words into the warp and the weft of the cloth they make, and they send that cloth out into the world where everyone can see it and remark upon its beauty. That would wake the dead, said Sokath, his eyes uncovered. His voice was breathless with awe. I cannot imagine what it would do to the living. To a living woman, I said to him. To a woman who saved a sister who loved her, he said to me, and saved all the other girls in her village, and came to the casa, and did not die in the night. Not yet, I said to him. When I talk to Lomelkeen, my thoughts run faster than they ever did before, he said to me. I can see things clearly, and it does not cost me effort. I miss the days when I had to work to see with the same clarity. Other men, though, they are glad of the lesser effort. Like weaving with wide thread, I said to him. The cloth is done quickly, but there are gaps where holes can appear, and the decoration is not so fine. Yes, he said to me, it is like that. Lomelkeen does not talk to me, I said to him. Or rather he does, but he mocks my home, even as he asks for stories of it. He does not understand what he has got this time, he said. I think he might, I said to him. I thought of the ram's look in my husband's eyes. Every night he takes my hands, and a cold fire light runs from my skin to his. I saw the same sparks the night at the Starfall party when he moved amongst the men there, only the sparks jumped from him to them. Did that happen to Fear Stone-Touched? For the first time there was urgency in his voice, and he leaned towards me. Yes, I said to him, it happened to everyone. It happened to you. I knew then that this was a debate he had laboured over for months, but never shared. It had gone on only in his head, round and round in circles, like sheep when the dogs bring them in, until he had caught a piece of proof from me, a direction that made sense, and followed it. Does anything else happen when Lomelkeen comes to you? He asked of me. It was an impertinent question if I chose to misinterpret it, but I did not. I knew exactly what he meant in the asking, and decided to tell him the truth. Yes, I said to him. Always Lomelkeen takes my hands, and the cold fire blooms from me to him. Sometimes there are pictures in it, my village, my sister, things he would like to take away and burn. And then, when it is done, thin copper lines stretch from his fingertips to mine, and I feel like my heart grows in my chest. I do not know if he sees the cold fire as I do, but I know he does not see the copper at all. It is as though we trade, though he does not mean to. Again, there was silence from Sokath, his eyes uncovered. The olives were gone, and the bread was too hard for even me with my desert-scoured teeth to chew. I sat and waited, though suddenly it galled me. It was still morning, yes, but the day would wear on, and then I might die. And here I sat, whilst an old man who did not even believe in small gods wasted thoughts with no action. "My queen," he said to me at last. His tone was quite formal, and I lamented that the easiness of our conversation was gone. He no longer spoke to me as though I were one of his students. "I am sorry that I do not have better answers for you, or better answers to guide your thoughts. I know that you do not know how much time you have left, but I need just that to consider." "Revered skeptic," I said to him, returning his formality, though I did not much like it. I stood, preparing to leave the garden. "I hear your words. Should you have more later, I will hear them too." "Lady bless." He was just an old man spitting olive pits again, and despite the title he gave me, he might have been talking with a girl instead of a queen. "I do not have answers or questions for you, but I do have some advice." "I will take it gladly," I said to him, and let the warmth back into my tone. At the same time, I was done with talking. Unaccountably, I chafed at my inaction. I knew it was futile. I was a prisoner of the walls, and though the spinning room was open to me, I was not content to spend my days making thread. I missed stitching and weaving. I missed grinding grain and kneading dough. I missed being useful and part of a family. I missed my sister, her eyes and her spirit and our fingers meeting as we worked. I felt anger burn hotly in my chest, though I fought to master it and gave no outward sign. Sokath, his eyes uncovered, had been nothing but polite and considerate to me. It was not his fault that I was trapped in this nightmare of Lomelkeen's making. "I think," he said to me, "that you are going to need a ball and a lamp." Fourth. When men give you their fear, it is easy to steer them on the path you wish them to travel. When men show you their worth, it is easy to determine what you will freely take. When men do both, it is easy to play upon their hearts as deftly as a musician might play upon his pipes. 1 dead girl was nothing. 2, only a little more. 10 was something to consider, at the very least, but it was not until I had used Lomelkeen's hands to kill 15 of them that their fathers and brothers began to take notice. They enacted their puny law. 1 girl from every village and from every district within the city walls. It took them a full waning of the moon to do it, and by then my count numbered 25. They were 2nd and 3rd daughters, or servants within the house passed off as kin by then. No one could turn Lomelkeen down, of course, not even when he sought his bride before the family had finished the rites for her sister. Men clung to the chance of it, the idea that their houses would be linked with their lords. The women knew better. Their fear was a delicious thing, so raw and powerful that I could not steer it. It could only be consumed. Their terror gave me power before I was strong enough to bend the men of the court to my will. By the time the law was brought to bear, I did not need the girls so much anymore. I had stores of power to last. I did not stop, though. There was no reason to, not so long as they served their daughters up to me for the asking. Lomelkeen hated it, of course. Hated that I used his hands for murder, and frivolous murder at that. Hated that I used his voice to give commands. Hated that I used his body to sit on a throne and issue edicts of my own. He did not care that I was a wise ruler and kept well those of his people that I did not kill. He screamed and screamed inside his own head, and at times I was tempted to burn him out completely, as had been the custom of my people, but I enjoyed his suffering, and so I did not. We rebuilt from the follies of his father's reign, and that is why the men of the court let us do it, no matter the cost. Our skeptics saw answers where before they had been content with questions, and built devices as wondrous as they were beautiful. Our priests had money for their temples and shrines, and the best bread and oil to leave as offerings for the dead they called small gods. Our people did not go hungry. Our army and our walls were strong. That was what men needed. I required something else. I found a carver who might have spent his days fletching arrows and raised him up to be one of the greatest artisans of the age. I found a skeptic who had laboured with sand and glass as a way to tell the time, and gave him water and small wheels so that he and any who looked at his clock would always know the hour. My cook had once been a simple miller, his hands used to grind grain for others. When I brought him to my kitchens, he learned the crafts, and before long his experiments had given us a flatbread that stayed fresh for days longer. A smith, a mathematician, an architect, a breaker of horses. The list went on. They were burning up, and they didn't even know they were afire. I had chosen my kingdom well when I took Lomelkeen for my own in the desert. There were other kings and other lands in the world, but his had been a people on the edge of greatness. 2 generations, perhaps 3, had stood between them and the master craft, science and mathematics. I had given it to them now, cutting the corners and speeding them along wherever I could. Had I wanted to conquer, I could have done so, but I was content with what I had. None of them wondered why it happened so quickly. They were too pleased with the results and raced ahead of me with all the enthusiasm of frisking colts. They made and wrought and calculated as though there were nothing that could stop them. If there was weakness left in a bridge too quickly made, or if a well was drained forever, I did not care. When I had power enough to last me, I would leave them. I did not care if they burned. None of them wondered how my wives died, save in their darkest dreams and most secret thoughts. As they did with their crafting, they simply accepted the deaths. The men stopped counting, as did I. No one paid any mind to the line of dark-haired, dark-skinned girls who came to the casa and met their end there. They were nameless and faceless under their veils. Sometimes I looked at them. Sometimes I touched them. Sometimes I simply burned them and then rode out for another. Until I got one that did not die. The first night she was mine, I did not bring the full force of my power to bear upon her. I was curious. This one had spirit. She had drawn my attention deliberately, and I did not know why until she was a horse and we rode away. She had put herself before me to spare her sister, and that was something that had not happened before. The second night she did not die, I mocked her and made her speak to me. The third night, I gave her all the fire I had, and still she lived. She was not of my kind, yet there was some power to her that was not quite human, not quite. She did not die, and I wondered if I might at last have found a queen for whom I could set the desert on fire. 16. On the 30th night after I wed Lomelkeen, he came to my rooms and did not leave them after he released my hands. Instead, he settled back on the soft silk pillows at the head of my bed. I still sat at the foot, dressed for sleep. The serving girls had extinguished all the lamps but the one that burned next to us, and the hour candle that stood in the corner. The air was heavy with perfume, a scent I did not care for, and I did not like the weight of it in my lungs. I was not wearing my veil, could not hide my face from him, so I thought of a stone that did not move and held myself still. He smiled his hunter smile at me. "You have lived with me longer now than any have, my wife," he said to me. "Why do you think that is?" I could not tell if he knew the reason or if he expected me to know. He did not mock me anymore when he spoke to me. Rather, he was hard and cruel, like a desert storm, visible for hours before it struck, but only to be endured, not evaded. I had preferred the mocking. At least then he had not paid me much heed. "I do not know, my lord," I said to him. "Perhaps my small god smiles on me, and his power is greater than yours." Now he smiled like a viper, like I had poked him with a stick. "The others had small gods," he said to me. "That did not save them." He said words like Sokath, his eyes uncovered, might have done, but in his mouth they were harsh. When the skeptic spoke, it was to encourage new thought. When Lomelkeen spoke, it was to obliterate through fear. "Our father's father's father was a good man when he lived," I said to him. "We have prayed to him for many years and left him great offerings." "I wonder, what do you think would happen to your small god if I ordered your burying hill burned?" He said blasphemy like it was nothing. To him it was. "Have you seen burning bone, my wife? It starts like a roasted goat, but then the meat strips away to feed the fire until the bone is left naked and alone. It twists and shatters, marrow leaking onto the flames, until only dust is left." "That is what happens to everything, my lord," I said to him, "if only the fire can be made hot enough." "Would you like to see it?" he asked. "No," I said to him. "I have seen it before when we have collected marrow for our use. I do not need to see waste." You are not curious?" he asked. "You do not wish to know how the world works?" "I am, and I do," I said to him. "But I would rather be patient and learn things in their own time than force knowledge where it causes destruction." "Did the sheep teach you such common sense?" he asked. "No, my lord." For the first time since he dropped my hands, I looked into his face. "I learned that from the goats." He laughed, a true laugh with his head thrown back and his mouth wide, and I could not hide my surprise. The cruelty was gone. No monster could have made that noise. And I thought about what Lomelkeen's mother had said to me the night of the starfall watching. If there was a good man in Lomelkeen somewhere, I had just seen my first real glimpse of him. No, my second. He had watered his horse with his own hands when we crossed the desert, and had not pushed the animals beyond their endurance. "Why did you heal your mother?" I asked him then. He sat up, surprised at my question, all trace of laughter gone from his eyes. "It is what any good son would do," he said to me. "Is it not?" "It is," I said to him, "but you are not her good son." He looked at me sharply. He had tested me before, as goats test a minder, and now I was testing him. I was not even sure what my question had meant, only that the words had come to me when I needed them. Threads from Sokath, his eyes uncovered, and from Lomelkeen's mother, both. It was clear to me that the words had meant a great deal to him, though, and now I had another puzzle, regardless of his answer. "I cured my mother because I had the power to do it, and because she was ill, and because it suited me," he said to me. Does that answer suit you? Yes, my lord, I said to him, the picture of meekness. It was the way my mother spoke to our father when she had won, but wanted to let him preserve his dignity. Lomelkeen smiled at me, not a hunter or a viper this time, but not quite a man either, or at least not the kind of man I wanted in my bed. I think we will do very well together, my wife, he said to me. If I do not die, I said to him. If you do not die, he said to me. He reached out and wound one hand into the fabric of my sleeping gown, pulling it towards him. Now, come up here and go to sleep on your pillows. If the serving girls find you down there in the morning, they will think you have angered me. Rather, I find you a delight. There was no way to do it without crawling, which irked me. If he had let me go, I might have stood and walked, but he didn't, so I was forced on my hands and knees like a babe. I put my head on the pillow as far from his as I could, and he smoothed the gown back over my knees before lying down beside me. Though he was within arm's reach, he did not touch me. Instead, he leaned over to put out the lamp. Just before the darkness swallowed us both, I saw that copper fire leap from him to me, though we did not make contact. Was this the last night then? I could not help but wonder. There were so many ways to kill a person while they slept. He did not have a knife on his person, I was certain, but his robe was in reach of the bed, and if there was a knife there, he might stab me while I slumbered. He could wrap his long fingers around my neck, or use the ties from the bed hangings to cut off the air to my lungs. He could place one of the pillows over my nose and mouth. He did none of those things. He turned on his side, facing away from me, and I counted his breaths until they were even. As determined as I was to stay awake, the softness of his breathing lulled me, and I drifted between one blink and the next. I saw the line of his shoulders faintly silhouetted by the hour candle when my eyes were open, and my sister's strong hands with a grinding stone when they were shut. I wanted my sister, wanted her spirit and her sharp tongue and the comfort her presence gave me. My blinks became longer until I saw Lomelkeen no longer. I knew it for a dream because my sister was there, and I was with her and not with her at the same time. She was grinding shells to fine white powder, the basalt stone heavy in her hands as she crushed her work into the stone trough. Her mouth was moving, though I could not hear her. She was singing, I guessed, or praying. I had never done this sort of work, but I saw how she did it. It was the same as grinding grain, except the grinding stone was long, flat on the bottom, and arched under her hands. The pestle was too heavy to balance on her knees, like the ones we used for spices. This was priestly work. Our mothers sat close by her, weaving broadcloth by passing the shuttle back and forth between them. It was not fine work, but it was good work, the sort I had hoped to emulate when I was a child. While I watched, my sister's mother looked at the shells and shook her head. They were not fine enough, I knew, though I had not heard her say it. They must be ground so hard that they forgot the animals they used to house, the place where they used to live. There must be nothing of their old power left. Only then could they be put to priestly use. My sister ground the shells again. I put my ghostly hands on her shoulders and felt the tired ache there. Grinding was rough work, even a small amount. My mother and my sister's mother were also always careful to make sure that the grinding of grain was a job shared by many, because if one person did it too often, it would twist their whole body. We were lucky to be healthy and to have enough men and women to do the job. My brothers had told us that others, not so well off as us, were forced to spend so much time grinding that they could not lie flat on their backs, nor spread their fingers out, nor even walk properly any longer. I did not know who did that job in the casa. I had not yet ventured into the kitchens. I did not know if Lomelkeen bought flour. He could afford it, surely. I had not set hand to a grinding stone, nor any work harder than spinning since I had left our father's tents. I had grown city soft. Perhaps the desert sun would break me if I ever went outside the walls again. The dream began to fade, my eyes closing over as I doubted myself. I did not want to lose this vision of my sister, but I did not know how to hold on to it. Sokath, his eyes uncovered, had called me strong, and I had not died, so maybe he was right. I tightened my fingers on my sister's shoulders, the way I had touched fierce stone touch the night of the Starfall party, and the dream became clear to me again. I could feel her muscles now, and the heat of her skin under her shirt. In the tent with just our mothers, they had taken off their veils and tunics. It was cooler that way, and easier to work in the desert heat. I kneaded my sister's shoulders the way my mother kneaded bread dough, and felt the ache lessen. Her breath came to her lungs, and she pushed the stones together harder than she had before. We did the work together, like we had when we stitched the dishwasher, only this time we whispered no secrets to one another. I did not think she would hear me, even if I tried, and by the time I thought to, my sister's mother had taken the stone from her hands, nodding and smiling at a job well done. I would have to remember when next I dreamed to see if I could talk as well as touch. My sister raised one hand to her shoulder, as though to massage her aches herself. Her fingers passed right through mine, but I felt them do it. For just a breath, I thought she might feel them too, but she shook herself, and that shook me back into my bed in Lomelkeen's casa, far away. It was daylight when I woke, still reaching for my sister's touch. Lomelkeen was gone. A new hour candle burned on the table, and there was my tea steaming beside it. The lamp was unlit. There was no need for it when the sun was up, but it was polished brightly. Beside it, painted gold, was a wooden ball. "17. I returned to the spinning room and found I was made welcome there. Grief and resilience are odd emotions, I was coming to understand. Before, the women had not wanted to become attached to me, as they assumed I would not survive. Now that I did not die, they were letting their guard down. I wondered what would happen when I did die, and how long it would take their hearts to soften again afterward. If I had been a nobler sort, I might have scorned their friendship to spare them future pain, but I was lonely and as common as our father's goats. Before, they had talked around me, and I had learned from them. Now they tried to include me in their conversation as much as they could, though there were, of course, some things we did not discuss. They were all city-born, though, and hungered to hear my stories about growing up in the desert. "Will it make you homesick to tell?" one of the weavers asked. "No, I do not think so," I said to her. "It makes me happy to remember." I did not tell him any of our special stories, the ones that my mother and my sister's mother whispered to my sister and me over the fire when our father and brothers were away on caravan. Nor did I tell them the stories I spun for Lomelkeen. Instead, I told them of the great silver-coloured birds that tried to take goats and even sheep from the herds my sister and I had watched when we were children. "My sister had better aim than I did," I said to them, "but I could throw a rock farther. When the great birds came, we shouted and waved our arms and threw stones. Even if we hit them, the birds were so big that we could not injure them too badly. They would fly away and leave our flocks in peace." "Lady bless, that sounds terrifying," a spinner said. "Big enough to carry you off, and you only armed with stones." "They do not have a taste for children," I told her. In the desert, the only things that do are lions and snakes, and both of those creatures will hunt anything. The birds only came for the flocks, and we drove them off. Where do they live? This from the embroiderer who specialised in stitching desert flowers into the hems of dresses for city women. I had no notion of where the birds lived, but I was in the rhythm of a story now, and could feel the word threads coming together for an answer. Far away to the north of us, beyond the sand desert and the scrub desert, there is a range of mountains higher than anything you can imagine. A skeptic had lectured about mountains at dinner a few nights ago and shown pictures of them incised on baked clay tablets. His mountains were by the Blue Desert, though, where Lomelkeen's mother had come from. And they come all this way for food? The embroiderer asked. Sometimes there are too many of them in the mountains, I said to her. So they pick the youngest and strongest birds and send them out across the desert to look for food. Poor things, to come so far for nothing, said the spinner. I smiled at her. Our father gives them the oldest sheep, who would be too tough for us to eat, and whose wool has failed, I said. He knows what it is like to go out with the caravan and provide for a family at home. What makes them so big? A weaver asked. We've large sandcrows here, but nothing so big as that. Again, I did not know, and again I felt the story threads come to me when I wished for them. There is a metal in those mountains that we do not have in the desert, I said to them. It is in the rocks there, and when the water in the mountain wadis rushes over them, part of the metal goes into the water. The birds drink of it and grow strong. That sounds like skeptic talk, said one of the oldest weavers. Lady bless, you are no skeptic. I am not, I said to her, but I have the stories of my village, and our father has travelled widely to bring us even more tales. It may not be the truth, but it is what I know. You are wise, Lady Bless, the old weaver said, and you are desert strong. Perhaps that is why the spinner who had started to speak cut off abruptly. Her spindle thudded to the ground as though someone had kicked her, and she dropped it in her surprise. All her thread was unwound. She would have to start again. I had been embroidering. My hands were finally soft enough to use the silk thread without snagging it at every turn. When I started talking, I had stopped paying attention to what I worked, but the work had not stopped. Needlecraft, whether carding, spinning, weaving, or embroidering, is a craft of the eyes. Talk is easy when you work because you could talk without taking your eyes from your task. Until the clatter of the dropped spindle, we had all been looking at our laps or hands where we held hoops, raw yarn, or small looms. Even the women who worked the bigger floor looms in the corner could talk with us without looking away from what they were doing. Now they all stared at me, and there was fear in their eyes. Surely they did not think I would be so cruel as to punish a girl for speaking what everyone already knew. Then I saw that they weren't looking at my face. They were looking at my hands. I looked down at my hoop. I had meant to make a caravan, camels and men, all brightly coloured on the desert sand beneath an endless blue sky. I had done the sky right enough and the sand because I had done them before I started to tell my story. But where I had meant to do camels, I had instead done sheep. They were scattered on the ground, running away. The hunter with them had his bow trained on the sky, but I knew he would not be able to fire his arrow in time. Plummeting out of the blue was an enormous bird. Wings extended longer than the man was tall, and terrible talons stretching for its prey. There was no way to be sure. Embroidery does not let you make pictures of people's faces in great detail, but I knew in my heart that the hunter was Lomelkeen. Lady Bless, began the spinner. Will you hush, woman? Said the old weaver. She looked at me with an awed expression on her face. Lady Bless, your work is very good, but perhaps that is all you should do today." She was terrified. I could hear it in the polite way she spoke, and the others in the room fairly quivered with it. They were like the sheep before the rainstorm that had flooded the wadi and taken my sister's brother. This was strange to them, and they knew somehow that a storm was coming. "Perhaps you are right," I said to her. "I am unused to such a long time at one craft. In our father's tents, we had too many tasks to spend so long at only one." It was not a very good excuse, but it was good enough to get me from the room. I held the hoop and the embroidered cloth tightly against my chest, blocking it from the view of any that I passed. When I got outside and reached the large vats where the dyers boiled the colorant we used to dye yarn and cloth, I threw the work, hoop and all, into the fire, and it burned just the same as any cloth would do. I returned to my room, anxious to not meet anyone in the gardens in case they had heard about what I had done. In our father's tents, gossip spread quicker than fire, and I knew that here would be no different. The women, at least, would all know by the time the sun set, and if the men did not, it would be because they did not care to, or because they did not believe what the women said. Whether Lomelkeen would hear or believe, I did not know. I did not know what his reaction would be. I stared at the hour candle in my room and prayed to the small gods. I asked our father's father's father for his strength and luck. To my mother's mother's mother, I prayed for survival. She had survived when she should not have, thanks to a talking camel. I did not think I was worthy of such a miracle, but I prayed for one all the same. Neither of the small gods had saved themselves in the end. Both had been saved by other forces. Perhaps it was enough to do your best and know when to ask for aid. There was a clamour in the gardens outside my rooms. On the other side of the garden was the bathhouse I used. It was not the only one in the casa, but it was the most private. I had never seen anyone else use it, and I knew only one person could be using it now. I pulled on my darkest veil. They would see me, undoubtedly, standing in the sun, but I did not want them to see my face. I stood in my door and watched 4 guards, fierce stone-touched among them, carry a litter into the bathhouse. On the litter, his dark skin pale and his fine clothes dark with blood, was Lomelkeen. I fled as they disappeared into the bath and did not see another soul until a serving girl brought me my dinner. "What is happening?" I asked her. "What is going on?" She was pale too, though her dark hair was still neatly bound up and her dress hung perfectly about her body. The cup on my dinner tray had clattered against the finger bowl when she set it down, and I knew that her hands shook, though now she had them balled up inside the pleats in the front of her shift. "Lady Bless," she said, "they say a monster attacked Lomelkeen while he was hunting in the desert." "How is this possible?" I demanded, though I thought I might know. If she had heard the story of my embroidery, she gave no sign of it. "A giant demon in the form of a bird," she said. "Lady Bless, they say it came out of the sky so quickly that not even Fleetfoot could have matched it for speed. Lomelkeen had a bow, but he could not fire fast enough, and the monster gored him in the side." "Surely he has been wounded hunting before," I said to her. "No, Lady Bless," she said to me. "Sometimes a graze, maybe, but there have been hunts when the lions took 4 guards, and Lomelkeen came back without a scratch." "You may go," I said to her, straightening myself where I sat. "Should my husband send for me, I will of course go. But leaving that aside, I do not wish to be disturbed again tonight. Understood?" She murmured her acquiescence and fled back to the comfortable safety of the kitchen. I ate my dinner slowly, rolling the pieces of spiced goat in bread and dipping them in oil before taking a bite, and then chewing with more care than I might have needed. This was like the gown, I realised. Only I had woven men and birds, not gold thread. I had not just seen it, I had caused it. I looked at the golden ball that had awaited me when I woke up that morning. I had made that too. I held my breath. It was not enough to wander, to set my power loose like the goats and hope that it found good grazing and heeded my call when I bid it to return. I needed it to be like that storm, something I could see coming, something I could prepare for. I would have to try again and see if I could do this work on purpose. Lo Melkeen did not rise from his sickbed that night, and so I slept alone. When I woke in the morning, there was a new-made lamp next to the golden ball.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Magic in her.
In your face, Lo Melkeen.
It's all going down.
Got by the bird. Do, 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 do. It's a work in progress.
That's lovely, Malcolm.
I may have watched well, a movie that I can't remember the name of now, earlier today. Acapella. Lots of acapella. What's it called? The movie.
Pitch Perfect?
Pitch Perfect.
Perfect. I watched that earlier today.
Okay,
So good. I've only seen the first one. I've not seen the others, but
First one's the best, I reckon.
Yeah.
I did quite enjoy the third one, although it's ridiculous. Like,
Third one?
there is a third one.
There is.
I didn't watch it because it's on a military base. Is it actually worth watching?
So crowbarred, the third film.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily you'll walk away having like gained insights about the human.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite
That's-
fun.
That is what I wanted out of Pitch Perfect. So.
Yeah.
Mm.
But anyway, sorry to like sidebar aside. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I needed
How
to be
will-
more a cappella from the birds.
How are you all feeling about developments?
Exciting.
Stuff happened.
I like the character of the cynic,
Yeah, the skeptic.
skeptic.
Still
sorry.
half his eyes uncovered.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so good.
Mm-hmm.
You give him your sweetest facial expression. Yes, it's really cute.
What is it?
Yeah, I can't do it. It's really, yeah. Like your face just goes very sweet with that character. Yeah, it's that huggy cuteness.
Ah, he's a very cute skeptic.
Like a little storyteller crush. That's cute.
Ah. I'm glad my affection for him comes across. Gordon, do you have notes?
I left my phone over there, so I didn't write down notes. So, but I do remember things, so I could do a non-note commentary like other people.
With your brain, you just remember things in your head.
I know it's kind of weird. I'm not sure if I can trust it because there's several things, but it's all about animals. None of them that move like this, but just general animals specifically. Okay, so I have this theory that there's descriptions of animals happening that are reflective of the growing power of our protagonist. So in yesterday's episode, there was a couple of times where she was referred to as sheep. And then in this one, there was a couple of times where she's referred to as goats earlier. She was like, she's more of a goat now, rather than a sheep. So she's leading rather than anything else. I was like, where do these animals go? Like, there's a bit of a lion thing with the statue that's made. So maybe the lion is where she's going to end up. Or earlier in there's like these birds that have appeared. Like maybe she's going to like be referred to like in the story as like those birds, like the thunderbirds or whatever, the rocks, whatever they, as something like that as she goes up. And then at one point, I did get confused because she described the time when she was a horse, and I know that means sitting on a horse and not actually a horse, but for a second.
I knew that you were going to pick up on that. I saw, like, as I was reading the sentence and like scanning ahead to see where the sentence went, I saw that word coming up like 6 words earlier, and I thought, oh shit, like, is this just going to completely like break the illusion by making everyone go, wait, what? She was a horse? I had like a split second of thinking, can I just like change that on the fly? Like, can I just change that to riding? But
and Lomelkin likes horses.
He doesn't. Maybe that's why
Suddenly it all makes sense.
It's why he hasn't killed her.
You remind me
Like,
of the
why haven't you killed me then? He's like, but you're a horse.
I think an interesting is that so far he hasn't killed her. I think he can't kill her.
Yes.
Or
Yeah, at least it sounds like that. Yeah, it sounds like he can't actually do it.
it's more that
He's usually at least.
yeah, the demon character seems to just expect that they will die. And so far he's sort of surprised that it hasn't happened.
I've done my powerful magic thing and she's still alive.
Yeah. And now he's all like, oh wow, like she's all like,
wow,
she can take it.
Oh dear.
Maybe we can be together.
There was a line near the start which was something about grinding so hard they were unable to walk the next day or something.
Don't do it like that.
One day.
Must be after shit.
You got out of place to get us in the story. But...
Oh, yeah, it's still recording. Shit.
Okay, we should say good night to the catch-up crew.
Look behind to the cat.
Good night, catch-up crew. I hope you're all a horse and that you haven't been grinding so much that you've injured yourself.